Everblaze, Chapter 20. Just let me tell Dex. Sophie told Biana, already imaging how much he would flip when he found out she'd agreed to include the backer. He'd warmed up to the family a little over the last few months, but she had a feeling he would never actually like them, especially Fitz. Biana shrugged. Sure, if you want. But why was he mad at you and Keith earlier? Oh, he thinks we told Dame Alina about him manifesting. Was that a secret? Yeah, he wanted to keep taking ability detecting to see if it would trigger another ability. He thinks being a technopath isn't cool enough to impress people. Or maybe he just wants to impress a certain person, Biana said with a sly smile. Sophie had a feeling she knew what Biana was implying, but it was one of those weird, awkward things she didn't know how to handle. So all she said was, Dex is my best friend. Biana nodded. Anyway, if you and Kif didn't tell Dame Alina about his ability, who did? I can answer that, Sanders said, making them both jump as he peeked his giant head through the doorway. Biana clutched her chest. Does he always eavesdrop like that? Pretty much, Sophie grumbled. Anyway, how do you know who told her? She asked Sander. Because it was me. I held the council after I held the council after I heard what you found at the sanctuary. If we're dealing with ogres, we're going to need all the technopaths we can get. But we don't even know that we're dealing with ogres, Sophie argued. So we must err on the side of caution. Whoa, wait. What about ogres? Bian asked. I'll tell you later, Sophie promised. And you, she told Sander, need to apologize to Dex. I know. I meant to warn him first. I did not realize the council would move so fast, but I will explain it all to him tomorrow. First chance I get. He left them then, closing the door as silently as he'd opened it, but Sophie was sure he was still listening on the other side. Biana didn't seem to care, immediately attacking Sophie with 10 billion questions about ogres. Sophie did her best to explain about the arrow mark, the homing device, and even the possible leak in the Black Swan. But there were a whole lot of maybes and mights and I don't knows in her answers. Still, the question that stumped her the most was, so what are we supposed to do now? I have no idea. Usually I have a note or a clue to go on. But even if the Black Swan give me one, it's not like I can trust them enough to follow it. True, Diana agreed, standing up to pace. She blinked in and out of sight as she moved, which was twice as trippy in her teal and luminite dress. Okay, she said, after the third time she'd passed by. It sounds like we need to figure out what's up with the Black Swan. How much do you actually know about them? Pretty much nothing. I know what one of them looks like, but only when he's eaten a bunch of ruckleberries. And I guess I also know he starts sentences with you kids a lot, since that's how I figured out that he was the one who rescued me. And I know they have a few dwarves that help them, and that they used to have a hideout in a cave in the middle of the ocean. And her voice trailed off as she remembered one more thing she knew about the Black Swan, assuming she'd understood what Prentice had shown her. Jolie. Okay. What about Jolie? Biana asked when Sophie didn't say anything. Sophie glanced over her shoulder to make sure the door was closed. She couldn't believe she was about to tell Biana this, but she had to trust someone. And telling Biana felt easier than telling Kif. Still, her voice cracked as she said, there's a chance Jolie might have been involved with the Black Swan. Biana's eyes stretched out as wide as they could go. Do you think that had something to do with what happened to her? I know Grady will. That's why I haven't told him or Edeline about it. For years, Grady had believed the Black Swan set the fire that killed Jody because it happened right after they tried and failed to recruit him. Sophie had asked Mr. Forkel about it, and he promised they had nothing to do with it. But if Grady knew Jolie was connected to them, especially since they might have a traitor among them. So, it sounds like we need to figure out how Jolie was involved, Biana said after a second. And I'm guessing you've already searched all her things? I'm actually still working on it. This place used to be kind of off limits. Really? Biana looked down at her teal dress. Wow, Grady and Edeline have really come a long way, haven't they? They had. And Sophie wasn't going to let anything set them back. They set to work packing up trunk after trunk of gowns and shoes and handbags and makeup and hats and jewelry. Every drawer they opened was crammed with more girly stuff, but they found nothing marked with the sign of the swan. Nothing that looked even remotely suspicious, and after a few hours of searching, they were running out of places to check. You know what I haven't found? Biana asked as she added another gown to her things to take home pile. Foxfire stuff. Wasn't Julie in the elite levels when she died? Yeah, she was almost done with level 8. That's what I thought. So then where are all her uniforms and textbooks and notes and whatever else they need for those crazy sessions? I don't know. Sophie couldn't believe she hadn't noticed it. She asked Edeline about it after Bian left, but Edeline seemed just as surprised as her. She even searched the room herself, like she was convinced Sophie and Biana missed something. I'm sorry, Edeline said, staring into Jolie's now empty closet. I wish I could snap my fingers and conjure everything up, but I have absolutely no idea what we've done with it. The whole first year after we lost her is just a hazy blur in my head. It's okay, Sophie said, wrapping an arm around Edeline's shoulder. I'm sure they were somewhere. I can't see you and Grady throwing them away. No, we definitely didn't do that. I mean, look at all this stuff we kept. She pointed to me to the row of overstuffed trunks. I can't believe there's more that's missing. Jolie must have been a big shopper. She was. And I'm sorry, by the way. I shouldn't have offered those clothes to Biana without asking you first. It's fine, Sophie promised, but some of the tightness had returned to her chest. Edeline reached up to tuck Sophie's hair behind her ears. You always come first, Sophie. I hope you know that, and I'm really glad to see you hanging out with Biana. You know I love Dex, and Keith is always very charming, but it's good to have girlfriends too. They can be a lot less complicated. Hey, Sophie, can I talk to you? Dex asked, catching her on her way into the girls' locker room. Sure, Sophie said through a yawn. She'd stayed up late, waiting for Grady to come home, but when she'd finally gone to bed, he still wasn't back. Edeline had assured her that overnight assignments were normal for an emissary, but she'd still had nightmares about Grady being hunted by ogres. I'm sorry I yelled at you yesterday, Dex mumbled, snapping her back to the present. I shouldn't have blamed you. I know you would never tell. About that, Sander interrupted. I meant to tell you earlier, Dex. I was the one who informed the council about your ability, Dex. I know, Dex told him, sounding surprisingly unirritated. I went to Dame Alina's office during study hall yesterday, and she told me how the council called her to make sure I started training right away. Can you believe that? The council cared enough about my ability to call the principal of Foxfire. They even insisted that I study with Lady Iskra. Wow, that's awesome, Sophie told him. Dex laughed. You have no idea who that is, do you? Not a clue, she admitted. Yeah, neither did I. But I guess she, invented all the things. Imparters, nexuses, even spyballs were all her ideas. There's pretty much no other technopath as talented as her, and the council wants me to work with her. They told Dame Alina that with Lady Iskra's guidance, I'll invent things that will change our world. He was practically jumping up and down and that point his smile was so big his dimples looked like they were making his cheeks cave in. So hey, Sophie started, deciding to take advantage of his good mood. Biana stopped by after school yesterday. Did she? That's weird. Oh, did I tell you my dad faked when he found out I'd been hiding my ability from him? No, Sophie said, surprised that Biana bombshell had gotten off a bigger reaction. And I'm not surprised. Yeah, I thought he was going to ground me or something. But then he realized I'm basically guaranteed a spot in the elite levels. And we spent the rest of the night coming up with awesome ways to tell all the jerks who've judged us over the years. Dex's father didn't have a special ability, and his marriage to Dex's mom had been classified as a bad match by the Elven Matchmaking Office. So more than a few people treated Dex and his triplet brothers and sister like they were all destined to be talentless themselves. Anyway, Dex said before Sophie could get too distracted by the craziness of the elven social system, I just wanted to apologize for being a brat, and I brought you something to make up for it. I've been working on it for a while, actually, but I finally finished it last night. He reached into his pocket and handed her something small and silver. It's a ring, Sophie said, staring at the plain silver band with a flat beige stone set into the middle. Yeah, I figured you already have a nexus on each wrist, and you have a ton of necklaces between your registry pendant and your home crystal and the allergy elixirs Elwin makes you wear. So I thought I'd make something different. A few of the girls around her giggled. Well, thanks, Sophie mumbled. It's pretty. Nah, the stone is crooked and the band isn't as round as I wanted it to be. But the switch under the stone works perfectly. He leaned closer and whispered, and if you press it, it triggers an alert right there. He held out his right hand, which had a matching silver band. More girls giggled, and there were several whispers about matching rings. Dex seemed oblivious as he explained, it's a panic switch, in case you're ever in trouble. As long as she stays by my side, she won't be in any trouble, Sander reminded him. Sophie jumped. She never thought she'd forget that she had a 7 foot tall goblin shadow. But apparently, all it took was a ring. It's still good to have a backup plan, right? A backup plan, right? Dex argued. And this way, if something does happen, you won't have to use up all your mental energy trying to call Fitz telepathically. You can just call me. Sophie hoped she'd never have to call either of them, but she could tell she'd hurt Dex's feelings if she didn't take his gift. So she shoved the ring into her right pointer finger, hoping no one would notice her new accessory as she left to get ready for PE. Of course they did though. She might as well have had a glowing beacon on her hand. And the crazy rumors took off like wildfire. By the time lunch break came around, Sophie was grateful she could escape the detention. Kip had saved her a seat in the detention hall, and even though she sat on her hands, she was fully prepared for some serious ring-related teasing. But all he said was, we'd better not be peeling curdle roots. I'm not touching anything else from the ogres. Sophie glanced at his hands, hating how red they looked. Was the treatment worse the second time? Don't know. I made Elwin knock me out. Woke up at home in bed with no idea how I got there. My mom even brought me tea and asked me tons of questions, like she was actually worried about me. A tiny smile crept across his lips, which made Sophie incredibly sad. Before she could figure out what to say, Lady Cadence strode into the room. Her elegant gown and cape had been replaced with a plain brown tunic and pants, and her hair was pulled back onto several ponytails. This can't be good, Kif muttered, earning himself a glare as Lady Cadence snapped her fingers and made a mountain of silver fork-like gadgets appear in the center of the floor. I hope you're ready to get your hands dirty, she said, picking up one of the gadgets and grimacing as she sniffed it. Because you'll be spending the next hour crawling through bushes and climbing trees. Every single one of these effluxers needs to be hidden around campus, according to my instructions. Can we make the gnomes do it? Stina grumbled. Lady Cadence stalked to Stina's desk, slamming the effluxer down with a clang. I'm sure the gnomes would be more than willing, Miss Hex, but they are busy with another task. Plus, that would rob you of your much-needed punishment. So for the suggestion alone, consider yourself lucky recipient of an extra day of detention. Anyone else looking for an easy way to get out of today's assignment? She glanced around the silent room, her eyes lingering the longest on Sophie and Keith. But neither of them said anything. Not because they were afraid of more detention. They both knew what Lady Cadence was really having them do. They were protecting Foxfire from ogres.